everybody can hear me okay, right? Okay. So good morning and welcome. But you can't see me, all right? Is there something wrong with my camera? Okay. It doesn't look like my camera is working. Don't know why. But I don't want to delay the meeting. Or do you think I should go back in? Come back in and sign in so that I can be seen? You know what? I will do that. I will delay the meeting for a minute, and I will go out, and then I'll come back in.
Director Moldow, would you like to proceed with the meeting while President Carpenter is trying to connect?
Okay, in which case, want to open the meeting. This is the regular open meeting of the Board of Directors of the Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods, a California non-profit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020, and it's 9.
Hello? You know what? I'm having trouble getting in. Somehow the go-to shortcut is gone, and I'm not being able to get it back. But I'm going to go into Yahoo and see if I can do the link. And I apologize for all this. I'm learning to get a little patient, so that I keep my patience when these technology things happen here.
Actually, we've just started the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know where Egon. Did you have any information regarding Egon? No? Okay. To continue, this is Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020. It is now 9:35 a.m. Okay, and we are in a virtual meeting. And I call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and Director Pearlstone will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Director Moldell. Hands of the heart, pledge allegiance. So, wait, everybody get up.
Okay. Do we have a flag? Yvonne, usually you have a flag.
Yeah.
Wait on the flag.
So,
There we are. Judith, very good. Ready?
okay.
Hands on the heart, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, do you want me to take over now? You still won't be able to see me.
Well, that's all right. We know what you
Okay.
look like.
All right. But the audience doesn't. That's the problem. Okay. All right. So the media, we can never see them on these virtual meetings, but I hope they are present. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So next order of business is approval of the agenda, including any adjustments to the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar to be placed on unfinished business?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Madam
Joan?
Chair, I'd like to place the list of committees onto the agenda. Take it off the consent calendar and put it under new
Your unfinished business?
unfinished business. Be 12C, I think it is.
Okay. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Hearing none.
Okay, if there's no other changes, the agenda is approved as corrected. Okay. The next order of business is approval of the minutes of September 1st, 2020, regular open session meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay. Hearing that there are no changes, corrections, or deletions of the minutes, they are approved. So the next is the report of the chair. And I'm just going to mention, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I was listening to the Disaster Preparedness Committee meeting, and it seemed to be that there was some confusion between the resolution having Carlos be the chair and a formal statement that was made by our previous council that basically said that the committees on GR properties must be a GRF committee. So I just want to make some of the facts here that the resolution, to have Carl as a security chair was never changed. To have the security chief be the chair, so that was never changed. And I truly believe that this needs to stay in the hands of security because there's consistency as long as Carlos or the security chief is the chair. And if you have GRF lead this committee, then you would have, several, whoever is chair at the time changes every year, agenda changes every year. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we are abiding by a resolution that basically says that he can be the chair. So that's all I have to say on that. So is Stephanie around? As Stephanie was going to, there she is, I see her. She does the VMS update.
Hello, good morning, board members, Madam Chair. Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? I'll bring my mic closer. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. So I'm one of the GRF representatives to the VMS board, and I appreciate that assignment. My focus this morning is on two particular things: customer service and gate access issues. And I'd like to start with customer service. The board has challenged, the VMS board has challenged the management to try to come up with different ways, additional ways to measure customer service. The ways that are being measured are coming back pretty satisfactorily. But right now, as I understand it, the only way they're measuring customer service satisfaction is through closed tickets. And not everything that they do for us as residents is closed, results in a ticket, let alone a closed ticket. But of the 461 tickets sent out, I believe this was in the month of April. Siobhan can correct me if I'm wrong. Only 171 responded. So I want to challenge the residents that if you do get a survey having to do with a closed ticket, and you do have something you'd like to say positive or negative, it's important to give your feedback so that we have an accurate reflection of satisfaction, customer satisfaction with the VMS services in across the board in different areas. So that's only, doing rough math here, less than 0.25% that received surveys responded. And the responses were generally positive, low 80s for the time to respond, and satisfaction with the results. But again, if you get a survey about a responsive customer service, your opinion on how customer service went, please go ahead and respond to that in a timely fashion. And then VMS will be coming up with other alternative ways to measure, or ways to measure other ways that service is provided to residents in addition to tickets and closed tickets. At least we've challenged them to do so. They've got a lot on their plate. So the other thing I wanted to highlight was the number of calls that are coming into resident services. A large percentage is attributable to gate access. And we'd like to challenge the residents to try to learn how to use Dwelling Live, which is an application that can go on your phone. And I believe they're looking into whether there is a desktop application for that for people that don't like to use their mobile phones. I know somebody said they had it on their tablet. Dwelling Live is an application where you can go in at your own time, at your own leisure, and put in your guests who can and request access through the gates with this application. And only 20% of the residents are using Dwelling Live. 80% are still calling in, and that's out of 13,000 calls into resident services in August of 2020. Almost a little more than a quarter of them, over 3,600 calls, were for gate access. So that's a lot of physical calls going into gate access, going into our security department for gaining access to the gates. So if people need help learning how to understand how to use, where to get the app or how to use the app, please call resident services. And to me, when I started using it, it gave me a lot of freedom. I thought I could do it in the middle of the night. I guess you could do it anyway by calling security anytime, but it's a matter of freeing up some of those calls that are going to resident services, since we do have a really competent application that you can use on your phone or on your tablet, and hopefully on a desktop as well at some point if we don't already have that. Lastly, I want to point out something. I said two things. I'm going to bring in three. Ernesto gave a report to the VMS board, maintenance and construction, and he managed to free up $16.5 million by changing the schedule, the painting schedule, just changing it slightly. So $16.5 million were freed up for use in other ways. I just wanted to report on that. You can get more details from Ernesto, Siobhan, or Jeff as needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Did you have a question, Egon?
Yes, I was wondering, Stephanie, you probably don't reach too many people with this appeal. could you put an article in the Globe, perhaps, with instructions on how to access the gates via phone? So, digitally. If you could do that, that might help get more people onto using that. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Okay, Bert?
Yeah. Stephanie, dwelling live is not something that comes to mind. Oh, sorry. Pardon me. Hold on. Okay. It's not something that comes to mind. Isn't there a better term that we could use that is much easier for seniors to grasp onto? Call for help or something that's more descriptive than dwelling live.
I'm going to defer to Siobhan on that because this is the name of an app, and the app is Dwelling Live app is not an emergency services. It's simply to get your whoever you come for services to your home, whoever you want to give gate access to, your friends, your relatives, your contractors that are coming. It's simply an application that you can sign on to and give permission for those people to come through the gates. That's all it does. And you're right, it could be named something else, but I didn't make the app, I'm just reporting on it. So I'll report that. I'll defer to Siobhan on that. Go ahead, Siobhan.
Well, again, as Director Brown indicated, we've been using the manufacturer's name of the software, Dwelling Live, but we're trying to come up with new ways to entice people to use the application, and one is the new app that's available for telephones. So you'll see more coming out in marketing of that availability.
Okay, wasn't familiar with that one yet. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right, the next order of business is the CEO report. Is Jeff going to speak, or are you going to speak, Siobhan?
I'm going to start. I apologize for not being on the video this morning, but to the President Carpenter and to the board members, I have a few updates. Wanted to give you, first of all, a little update on COVID-19. The information that we're being provided by the county shows that Orange County is in a stable mode right now. The numbers for Laguna Woods have stabilized at 67 cases. We did have one additional death in the community of Laguna Woods. It was not in, it was in a rest home or outside of the gates. So that's unfortunate, but in a sense, good news for the village. The rates are such that we are in Orange County in Tier 2, which is the second highest rate. They were trending towards moving towards moderate, but they had recently all throughout California and including Orange County a little bit of an uptick in hospitalizations. And because of that, we are in a standing mode in this Category 2 for another additional 2 weeks. And if our numbers continue to trend downward like they were, then I think the possibility is that we could move into the moderate category, which would be Category 3, and that would be good news. Right now, we're at 4.4 cases per 100,000, and it has to be under 4 to get to that next level. There were 120 positive cases received yesterday, and about 3,000 cases that were tested, 3,393 cases. The hospitalization rate is 168, and the ICU number is 53. That ICU number, by the way, is up a little bit from just Monday, in which I provided information relative to the weekend numbers that they had from Orange County. So that's my quick COVID-19 update. Wanted to mention that on a recreational areas, that yesterday we opened up extended hours with regards to Pool 4 from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that was, we've been working on trying to figure out what areas we can expand and enhance our outdoor activities. So that was Pool 4. We we're able to contract with additional lifeguard services to expand that service. And as well as opening Pool 4 up, we will be expanding our pool service to Pool 1 as of Monday, the 12th, and those hours will be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Pool 1. So this should have the ability now to, with our reservation system, to get people the access to the pools that they have been requesting. It gives us expanded hours, which gives us more reservation times to address the interest that we had from our residents. We also opened up the bocce courts at Clubhouse 1 yesterday, and that is also by a reservation system from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I also wanted to mention that really good news for us is that as of yesterday, our equestrian supervisor was on board with us. That is Laura Covarrubias. I hope I pronounced her last name right. Laura comes from an extensive writing background. She's a native Californian. Recently, she was working at a director of equine services up in a large therapeutic riding center in the Northwest. And we were able to entice her to come down to the village. She has family down here in Southern California, so it is kind of moving back home for her. And we're real excited to have her on board and hoping to enhance our services there at the Equestrian Center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Siobhan if she has additional items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Honorable President, members of the board, I just wanted to follow up on one item that Jeff omitted on his recreation update, and that is that the Outdoor Fitness Center in the Clubhouse 1 Breezeway opened yesterday as well. This is open daily from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And additionally, a new outdoor entertainment series has launched. The series kicks off on Sunday, October 25th, featuring the Rock of Ages Band in the Clubhouse 5 parking lot at 2 p.m. This outdoor series will include live music, comedic performances, and more. Tickets are on sale now and are $5 per vehicle or golf cart and are available on ActiveNet by calling Recreation at 949-597-4273 or emailing the department at recreation@vmsinc.org. In terms of the November 3rd national election, the City of Laguna Woods will serve as a vote center and feature a drop-off ballot box at City Hall. The ballot drop-off box will be open beginning on October 5th, and the vote center will be open from October 30th through November 3rd. The City of Laguna Woods has also launched a COVID-19 home electric subsidy program where qualifying households can apply to receive a subsidy payment for increased electric costs paid to Southern California Edison between March and August 31st. As a result of complying with the COVID-19 public health measures, the deadline to apply is October 21st at 5 p.m., and you can visit the City of Laguna Woods website for additional information. I also want to remind everyone that the bulky item trash collection program is available on the third Saturday of each month, so the next collection date will be Saturday, October 17th. Please notify resident services prior to setting out any bulky items on October 17th. Resident services can be reached at 949-597-4600. And lastly, the temporary coin distribution program is ongoing for residents who need quarters for their laundry services. The distribution of coins occurs on Thursdays at Clubhouse 3 for United residents and Clubhouse 5 for Third residents. Hours are 8 a.m. to noon. Residents may purchase two $10 rolls of quarters and must pay an exact change in paper currency. Thank you. That concludes my updates this morning.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
I have a question regarding in-person voting center that we generally use at Clubhouse 4. Will that be open for this time?
No, your closest vote center will be City Hall.
we can go and vote in person?
Yes, the vote center at City Hall will be open October 30th through November 3rd.
So in-person voting can be done any day between those 2 days, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I have another question regarding gym that I was going to ask. You have answered some part of it. Are there any machines outside, or just we do freehand exercises outside?
Now there are machines outside in the breezeway of Clubhouse 1 for fitness. It just opened yesterday.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Siobhan. That's really good news. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the open forum. And at this time, the speakers may address the board of directors regarding items not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the board of directors of the Golden Rain Foundation. This is a one-page limit per speaker, and a speaker may only address the board once during this period. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum. So I have to ask staff, how many speakers do we have at this point in time?
Good morning, President Carpenter and esteemed members of the board. We have 2 comments today. Our first one is from Ms. Kathy Garris at 3138B as in Bravo. It's regarding bathrooms in the community center gym. She's asking that we please, as we go forward with opening facilities and clubhouses in Laguna Woods Village, consider changing the policy of gender-neutral bathrooms in the community center gym. With allowing men to use the women's bathroom, you have provided a very unsanitary facility for women. There is no urinal, so men use the toilet, which is very unsanitary. The area around the toilet is always a bit wet. The toilet seat is always a bit wet, and the seat is usually left up. I understand some of the reasons for the change to gender-neutral bathrooms. Some seniors take longer in the bathroom. Some are disabled and take longer. However, these issues were not considered when the gym was built. Now we are faced with the consequences. One idea would be to allow the use of bathrooms in the community center. A device could be installed on the outside door to the hallway, such as it is used in the mini gym in Clubhouse 5. This would allow the return of designated bathrooms for women and men in the gym while providing an alternative in the community center bathroom. I would like to point out that there are no other gender-neutral bathrooms in Laguna Woods Village, and bathroom facilities in both the gym in Clubhouse 1 and in Clubhouse 5 are outside the gyms. Also, while it was stated that it is state law to provide gender-neutral bathroom facilities, there are no other bathrooms in the entire village that have this designation. Also, I believe in Orange County Health Department, we were to visit the gym bathrooms in the community center, the gym would be shut down and possibly fined. It is unhealthy and even life-threatening to have a germ-infested facility for those with underlying health conditions, not to mention the unsavory experience for us all. Thank you for your consideration of my request, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Next request is from Jean Braden, 199B. We need to start having things available like gym and clubhouses. Gym on the outside and movie theaters now open. We need more people to attend the clubhouses to keep open with outdoor activities. You guys are charging us for amenities that you no longer offer. It appears that this has already been addressed. Thank you. That is all.
At this point in time, are there responses from any of the directors? Would anyone like to respond to the speakers? We have no comments. Okay. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Pardon?
Bunny, I have a question and comment regarding the bathroom use.
Okay.
It is perhaps necessary that we open up the bathrooms, the restrooms, while there is a lot of people working around and they need to go to the bathroom. Where do they go? If the bathroom is open. So can you make arrangements to keep the bathrooms open or restrooms open?
Siobhan?
Yes, thank you. We do have restrooms available for those who are out walking in the community for exercise. Clubhouse One is one example, and there are others that are open. We can certainly publicize this list so everyone is aware.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more responses? Egon?
Yeah, Siobhan, are both bathrooms at Clubhouse One open? I mean, both sides?
Egon, I will need to check on that because with yesterday's fitness center opening and so forth, I'll need to get you a update, and I'll provide that at our closed meeting this afternoon.
Okay.
I apologize. Mr. Gruner's on the line. He can answer that right now.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Siobhan. So both restrooms are open at Clubhouse One. Since we opened the outdoor gym, we've decided to open up all the restrooms over there, with the exception of the Pool One locker rooms, which also has restrooms, but those remain closed at this time.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask a question. For the outside gym, that requires reservation also?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I haven't been using, I haven't been reserving anything. So for a person like me, where can I go to that I can start? Do I put an app? Is it the Port app on my phone in order to register? How do I register?
Yeah, so basically you would have to either go online to the Laguna Woods Village website and go under recreation and click amenities. And you have actually two options. System, but the court system is only for the racket sports and swimming. For the gym, you would go under the ActiveNet reservation system, and you will actually just follow the link directly, from our website to that ActiveNet system, and then register and make your reservation that way. Or you can also call us here in the recreation office to make a reservation.
Okay, thank you. That'll be very helpful. So the next item is the consent calendar, and all of the matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine, and will be enacted by the board by one motion in the form listed below. In the event that an item is removed from the consent calendar by members of the board, such item shall be subject to further discussion and action by the board. So the item on the consent calendar is a recommendation for finance and for the finance committee. The consent with the statutory obligation, a subcommittee of the board consisting of the treasurer and at least one other board member reviewed and approved preliminary Golden Rain Foundation financials for the month of August 2020, and by this vote ratify that such review be confirmed in this month's board member open session meeting minutes. Okay. Hearing no objections, the consent calendar is approved.
As amended.
As amended, thank you. The next order of business is unfinished business. Do I hear a motion to approve the amendments to the Golden Rain Foundation Recreation Special Events Department Policies and Procedures? And this has now completed the 28-day review. And Secretary, I'm going to ask you to read the resolution. And as I was reviewing the package, I was a little confused, but there's one resolution to be read, only one. I reviewed that with Jackie before the meeting.
Those two attachments, and that's what I was going to ask you. Do you want me to read one attachment at a time and react on attachment 1 first, then I'll read attachment 2, which is different, and we take action on attachment 2. Or should I just read them both and we vote on them as one thing? What do you want me to do?
Attachment 1 and 2 are not applicable. That is only there for reference.
Okay.
Right. So if you go a little bit further in your packet, you'll see the resolution which actually be shows.
Okay, so now, okay. Got it. Okay, so Resolution 90-20-XX, amendments to Golden Rain Foundation, Recreation and Special Events Department policies and procedures. Whereas, at the August 13th, 2020 Community Activities Committee meeting, CAC recommended that the Board of Directors approve the proposed amendments to the Golden Rain Foundation, Recreation and Special Events Department policy and procedures. Whereas, the policy was last amended in October of 2019, glossary and mandatory adherence 90-19-17, and clubs, groups, organizations revisions 90-19-39. Whereas, at the May 14th, 2020 CAC meeting, the committee discussed and requested that GRF legal counsel review and make policy verbiage changes to prevent clubs, groups, individuals from having exclusive rights to vendors and or entertainment or performers. Whereas, at the June 11th, 2020 CAC meeting, the committee further discussed club exclusive rights to vendors/entertainers and proposed additional edits to the policy pertaining to the use of GRF recreation facilities. Saddleback Emeritus lecture topics at the Performing Arts Center, club membership, and club fundraisers. Whereas, the policy amendments would enhance the understandability of the Recreation and Special Events Department policies and procedures for residents and staff implementation. Now therefore be it resolved October 6, 2020, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby adopts approval of the proposed amendments to the Golden Rain Foundation Recreation and Special Events Department policy and procedures. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. September was the initial notification. It was a 28-day notification for member review and comments that complied with Civil Code 4360 has been satisfied. And I move that we adopt this resolution.
Do we have a second? Egon, is that a second? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, is there any discussion?
It's fine.
Okay. No discussion. So, all those in favor of the motion? So we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6.
Sure.
Okay. 8. Okay. So the motion passes. Basically, the motion passed. Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is discuss and consider the location of the peace pole. Okay, and this is was put on the agenda because there was a question about the location. So basically, we want to. The motion would be to direct staff to find a location for the peace pole. So, would someone like to move to direct staff to find another location for the peace pole? Egon.
Maybe we should hear from Brian first. I understand he's in communication with the club and may have already decided on what should be done.
I was going to do that during discussion.
You can do it during discussion.
Okay.
Right. So
I move. Can I?
Okay.
Madam Chair.
John? Okay.
I move we direct staff to find another location for the peace pole in Aliso Creek Park.
I second that.
Okay, now discussion. And Brian, would you like to speak on that?
Sure. Thank you, Honorary President and members, board directors. So basically, it's come up that the peace pole in its current location may have affected some individuals playing or utilizing that specific area for various activities such as badminton, also the concerts in the park that were hosted there in that location. So initially, this was brought to the board's attention back in August, and it was approved to go ahead and relocate or replace the peace pole that was initially there and placed there in 1992, which was washed away during some flooding that occurred a few years ago. And so at that time, the directive was to put in a new pole in the same location where the existing pole was located. And essentially, that's what we did. But now, obviously, as you know, with the pandemic and the closure, people are utilizing that area for different purposes. And so it's brought to our attention to bring this back up to the board to get a directive in regards to either finding a new location for the pole or have a dialogue and discussion about its current location. So essentially, that's where we're at this time. And we can certainly discuss looking at a different location if that's the directive that the board wants to give staff. I know we do have Latifa here from the Concerned Citizens group that was instrumental in actually rebuilding and recreating the peace pole. So, President, Chair, I'm not sure if that's something, if you want to have Latifa kind of weigh in regards to the location or not. But at this point, we don't have any alternative sites or locations in mind. We wanted to see what the directive was from the board first, and I think we leave it up to discussion at this time.
Okay. So Latifa and then Bert.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Uh-huh.
All right. So the peace pole, going back to when the peace pole was first installed in 1992, it was part and parcel of planting the golden rain trees, the 6 golden rain trees, which also came from Concerned Citizens, those golden rain trees. So the golden rain trees, together with the peace pole, were to create a peace grove. So that's why this is all there. I do understand that now that area is being used for a lot of activities that cannot be in the recreation centers where they used to be. And I also understand that people are impatient because of the limitations placed on our daily lives from COVID. The peace pole takes as much space as an individual would take up in the standing there. It doesn't take up any more space than a single person. So if a single person is an obstacle, then we'd have to start removing people. I don't know. I understand the need for extra space because the clubhouses are closed, but that'll go away. It was created to make a peace grove, to have a place where you could sit in peace and be at peace and be quiet. It's temporarily being used in another way. I think another thing that limits the space there is, and I think that's also temporary, perhaps for whatever reason, there have been trucks driving through the area underneath the monkey trees and so it makes deep ruts in the ground, and then they've been filled with water. So there's a good area there between where the Peace Grove is and where the big empty field is, where a lot of the Tai Chi things are happening and the badminton is happening. That's mucky, that's like a swamp. And I don't know, that's not from the peace pole. I don't know what it's from. There's some trucks, some with big tire tracks that go through that area with a lot of water, and it's like a swamp. there's a whole big area like a swamp on one side there. But I don't know what causes that. So, you know, we have this, you had this, I think, a long time ago in your stuff. This is the article that was in the papers in 1992 that talks about Golden Rain agreeing with landscaping to the 6 golden rain trees and the people. That was in our original submission in March, April. So, and I want to thank all of you. You've been very helpful, and I'm sorry that you're getting some complaints, but I think it's just people getting a little, you know, pushed because of the virus.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is Bert and then Egon.
First of all, I'd like to know from Brian, what are we looking at in the way of cost in making such a move now? Because I'm getting tired of us doing something and then having to undo it at additional cost. This issue, if it were an issue, should have been brought up by people before we got this far. Secondly, I believe there is a petitioning process that's required. I mean, how many people in a community of 16,000 people are being disturbed by the location of this pole? So why hasn't, I mean, I would entertain that if somebody wants to raise the issue, they should be required to submit a petition. And I believe the number of residents required, I think, is what, Joan, 5%? Yeah. You know, before reconsideration. I mean, this has been a done deal. Let's stop spending money over and over again. Thank you.
Okay, Egon, you're next.
The only question I had was, actually where it's sitting right now, it looks like it's sitting in United territory, not on GRF. It's not close enough to the creek to be in GRF. I don't believe it. You can go look at the poll on that.
It's not sitting in United. It is in GRF territory.
Yeah. Okay, Brian?
I just wanted to comment on that. We did research that, and it is definitely in GRS property. As a matter of fact, you can see the picture on back here on attachment number 2, and it is probably about 2 to 3 feet within GRF property. If you draw the property line on the first picture, going from the PVC pole on the bottom, and then we pull that line straight across to where the next pole is, you can see it is within the GRF property. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more comments? What I'm hearing is that Latifa would prefer to have it stay where it's at. Is that what I'm hearing? Latifa? I can't, you've got to turn on your, there we go.
And my understanding is they took pictures, they made a mark, they sent it to wherever they sent it to for approval of that location, and then I got a message saying that location had been approved. So it was decided by you all. We just were asked where was it originally, and we said where it was originally. And then that was sent in, and then I got a note that had been approved. So we put it there. I mean, landscaping put it there.
Okay. The only other question I need to ask is I understand that it's badminton players that play there. So my question is there another location for the badminton players? Brian?
Yeah, I mean, there are various locations within the park that people could go. I have a feeling the reason why they chose that is because it is more shaded probably than other spots within the park. That's just my assumption. And my understanding, we also have like a Tai Chi class happening there too. So are there other locations? Yes, there are other locations that those people can go to.
Okay. So is there any other discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of having, staff, Grant, will you repeat the motion?
Yes.
Grant?
The motion was to make a motion to have staff consider a relocation for the peace pole in Aliso Creek Park.
Okay. So all those in favor of directing staff to move the peace pole? We have one person? Okay. All those opposed? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Come on, guys, everybody vote.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6.
I voted yes, Funny. This is John. I voted yes.
Okay, well, hold your hand up. Okay, John's yes.
I did during the yeses, but now we're on the no's, so I want to be clear. She didn't count me.
Okay, because I couldn't see you. Okay. All right. So the motion
I'll
is.
go for yes. I'll go for yes.
You want to move it?
To move it or to deny the motion?
To move it.
But you better vote again, Bunny. People didn't understand the
They
direction.
don't understand. Tell them what it means.
Okay. If you vote, the motion was to direct staff to relocate. So if you say yes, then you're voting to have staff relocate. If you vote no, then you're denying the motion and you do not want the pole to be moved. So I'm going to ask again, all those in favor to direct staff to move the location. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Right. All those opposed. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6.
6. Okay, so the motion is denied. All right. Thank you. And thank you for Latifa for your input. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is 12C, which is the GRF committee assignments. And in addition to what is listed, the following changes also need to be made. Okay. CAC, John Pearlstone, Chair. Juanita Skillman, Advisor. Media and Communications, Joan Millen, Chair. Sue Stevens is going to be on another committee. She'll be removed. Juanita Skillman, Advisor. And then the Ad Hoc Insurance Committee, John Pearlstone as Chair. So are there any further changes?
Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes. Judith?
Yeah, I think we want to about this backwards. I should read it first as it was presented, and then someone could move because I want to make those changes as well. And then someone moves to make the changes because there are a couple of additional changes to yours. So everyone should have the copy with the highlighted changes. But like one of the changes is John's mentioned twice under the insurance, so we need to remove him. And then if we're still following the committees, some committees have 3 GRF and 2, 2, 1, and committees don't. And so we need to decide, since we haven't passed the new bylaws or bylaw changes yet, we're still mandated to follow the bylaws as far as the 3221. So we need, and normally if, let's say, we're supposed to have 2 people for United, and a couple of places where Juanita dropped off, no one was put in her place. So what we would say is vacant is how we used to do it in the past, and then parentheses United, and so we show that, yeah, we understand the bylaws, and the same with we only have 2 GRF people, like under the bylaw committee. We would say the 3rd GRF person would say is vacant, and then parentheses GRF. So at least until we do change the bylaws where we can be more flexible with our committee assignments, today we need to be legal. So, I'd like
Madam Chair.
Yes. Well, sorry. I'm done for now.
Okay, who would like to speak?
Rainer Rosberg, the Towers Mutual 50.
Okay, Rainer.
I was not able to print your packet, so I don't know who you have down for Maintenance and Construction Committee, but it should not be me. It should be Anessa. So who's there?
It should be, say again.
It should be Anessa Nordliff, Maintenance and Construction.
Oh, I see, because it says Rainer.
Yeah, it should be Anessa.
And how do you spell that? I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, just a minute.
Okay. Do you know how to spell it? Iness is
I-N-S-A, then N-D-L-E-T-H. Do you have it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Rainer, do you have her email address for the chairman so that he can contact her?
I believe I have it because she was on earlier this year, and I guess they'll have it. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Either Joan?
Under Community Activities Committee, where Juanita is off for United, shouldn't Elsie Addington now be the representative instead of the alternate?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Bunny, I'd put a question mark in the box whenever you can get to it.
Okay. All right. Everybody's raising their hands, so okay.
Bunny?
Well, yes.
I think we need to
then we'll go to the box. Okay.
We need to clarify the status of the PAC Renovation Ad Hoc Committee. Is it still in existence, and for what purpose? Because basically, what we're doing now has really reverted back to the M&C Committee, and I don't think there's anything there for the Ad Hoc Committee to do.
John?
That I agree. I feel that should be folded in. Will certainly be part of the discussions under strategic planning. So we could establish that committee if there were a need to once we get some findings that are larger than what M&C is handling for the PAC. But I see no point in having that committee until we know further steps we plan to take with it.
Okay, so we're going to remove the PAC committee, not the PAC. Sorry. All right. Let's see.
So I have another question, though, if that's okay.
Okay.
So my question is for Raina, and that is, I'm looking at the Strategic Planning Committee, and Raina, I know you and I have tried to connect on who you want on that committee, but can you let us know now so we can just go ahead and put it on there?
Raina.
I would like Maureen, and I can't say her last name, but I can spell it for you. Just a second. Her last name is Mamula. First name Maureen.
So just one representative from Towers.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I see in the box here, okay, we already, and John and Cheryl. So Cheryl, do you want us to repeat the changes?
Yes, please. I did not get them all.
Okay, Judith? You've got to turn on your mic. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Under CAC, Juanita Skillman was removed. Elsie Addington, we deleted the word alternate, so she becomes the second United person. Under the Equestrian Center, for the third GRF person, we just want the word vacant and GRF. And United, and it's my understanding, United and third do not have to participate. And then under Purchasing Ad Hoc Committee, a third GRF person would just read vacant. And under Landscape Committee, the same thing. There needs to be 3 GRF. So there'd be, under Burt Maldow would say vacant and GRF, so that there's a vacancy for the third person on Landscape. Maintenance and Construction, under Mutual 50, Anessa Nordland. Would you like me to spell it? I think you have it probably, Cheryl. But that's the only addition for Maintenance and Construction. Clubhouse 1 looks good. Under the PAC, that whole committee, I think right now is what we're going to vote to delete it, the whole committee. Is that correct, Bunny? We're going to delete the whole PAC committee. Under Media and Communications, Joan Milliman was added as the chair, if I heard that right. And so then the word chair behind Sue would just be deleted.
Right.
And going down to Media and Communications, again, yeah, sorry, that's where I was. I beg your pardon. Juanita Skillman, I'm sorry, again was removed. So that we could put vacancy for a second United person. Oh no, if you go on the next page, they have it. Sorry, next page. So that was the only change there, was removing Juanita since she went to BMS. Mobility and Vehicles, we have 3 people there, that's fine. Security needs a third person under GRF. So under Bert's name, there'd be a vacant, and then in parentheses, GRF. And Disaster Preparedness, that's fine. And then Bylaw Committee, that's new. Again, Juanita Skillman will be removed. And Sue Margolis, that I didn't understand. She's the alternate, but we can leave her there today because she's got another month and a half. So instead, take alternate off and just time being, Sue would be the second United person since Juanita was taken off. And we can put the third GRF person as vacant. And then Insurance Ad Hoc Committee, that whole committee is new. So John Pearlstone's name is on there twice, so we can remove his name the second time. And I didn't know if that one had to follow the GRF bylaws, in all honesty. So I don't know if we need the 3221 on that. That would be up to Bunny. What will we be doing with that? Do we need the 3221 on that one? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So we'll leave that one as it is and change it next time because that's a new committee. So those are the changes that I took notes on and resolve further that the resolution prior to that, 90-2042, that was adopted last month now, is hereby superseded and canceled, and resolve further, officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution, and I so move that this amendment.
No.
Go ahead. One more changes.
One more change.
Go ahead.
Another one.
One more change on media and communications. Please add Juanita Skillman as an advisor.
Okay, media and community. Okay. Advisor.
And Sue, are you staying on? I hope. Sue Stevens.
I'm here. I am.
Yeah. Hi.
No, actually, I resigned, and so you should put her as the other GRF.
We have one missing GRF on.
Oh, okay. One.
That'll be vacant. The word vacant under Joan Milliman, in parentheses GRF.
Okay.
Right.
And then Juanita Skillman, advisor. Okay, that sounds right. Any other?
One question for Reiner. Reiner, do you have anybody that's on the renovation ad hoc committee for Clubhouse One?
I thought it was Anessa, but I'd have to check.
Could you get that back to me, please?
Yes, thank you.
Then Cheryl, under Clubhouse One. Yeah.
I was going to say, this is John. I put 2 changes you did not read in the chat box.
Oh, okay. No, he's not reading the chat box. Keep the change that John will be chair. Yeah. Yeah, I said that.
That's not on there. And then don't forget Maureen was mentioned for Mutual 50 for strategic planning.
Your name is on there as chair. If you read, it is on there as the chair. All I did is I removed your name the second time. They had your name repeated twice.
On the CAC?
No, I'm looking at it under insurance. Okay, a CAC. Let me turn to the page.
Yeah, that was one that we said had to that was going to be amended. He's the new chair of CAC. And next month, you guys, it'll be much better. We'll tackle all of this before the meeting.
So, Bunny, are you still on the committee as an alternate, or do we take you off completely? Because then there's 4 GRF people.
No, there's 3 people. There's Yvonne, John, and myself.
Okay, so just erase the word chair from you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So was it there another change? John, add Maureen Manuel. Okay. For strategic planning. Let me find that page. Strategic planning. Maureen Manuel as Future 50. Is that okay, Rina?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know her. That's good. Okay. Mutual 50. Okay. Cheryl, you got that? Okay.
Yes, I did.
And then I made notes, so when I go through the minutes, to approve the minutes, I'll refer back to this page. Okay. So now, resolve further that officers and agents of this corporation hereby are authorized on behalf of this corporation to carry out this resolution, and I so move this amended resolution be approved. A second. Who's going to second it?
I second it.
Okay. Who was that?
Joan.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. It has been moved and seconded that a GRF committee appointments be approved. Are there any objections? Okay. So the amended committee appointments are approved by unanimous consent. I'm getting better. Joan's scripting for me. Okay. All right. So the next item on the agenda, and thank you so much, Judith. That was hard to pin down. Okay. So the next item is new business, and I like to hear a motion to approve the equestrian application for Village Community Fund Help the Herd program. Basically, because this donation program requires a signature of the GRF president. And before the GRF president can sign it, the board must approve. So if you would like to hear, a little bit, or you've read in your packet, this is going to be a new program for the Equestrian Center that will be accepting donations. The program will have some horses, but we'll also have several items that can be donated, through our own donation. I think what is it called, Joan? It's called the donation.
Village Community.
Right.
Yeah, Village Community Fund. Village Community Fund. Okay.
I need to read the endorsement, and that would help.
Okay.
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 Endorsement to the board. Equestrian application for Village Community Fund Help the Herd program. The committee reviewed a resident request recommending that the GRF Equestrian Ad Hoc Committee submit a project application to Village Community Fund, which would create a charitable tax-deductible fund to benefit the Laguna Woods Village Equestrian Center and GRF horses. Staff was directed to move this item to the October GRF meeting to recommend approval of the board of directors. So I move that we accept this endorsement.
Is there a second?
That's it. That's more.
I second.
Yvonne, was that Yvonne? Okay.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? Okay. So the endorsement is approved then. The next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the UPS entry business license 2020 for the purpose of installing a delivery pod at Clubhouse 1 and Clubhouse 5 during the holiday season. So maybe you want to speak to this, Siobhan.
Certainly. Thank you, President Carpenter. For several years, the United Parcel Service has placed pods in the parking lots of Clubhouses 1 and 5, one pod in each location, to help with the transfer of packages during the holiday season. This holiday season, the pods are proposed to be placed from October 26th, 2020 through January 4th, 2021. The pods are placed away from the clubhouse facilities and do not interfere with the circulation of traffic around these two facilities. Staff is recommending, again, to enter into a entry license agreement with United Parcel Service. The United Parcel Service will provide necessary indemnification and insurance for the Golden Rain Foundation as well as Village Management Services Incorporated. So staff is recommending approval of this item.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Joan?
I move we approve the entry license agreement for United Parcel Service for this year.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, all
Yes.
those in favor? Yes?
Yes. I have
Okay.
a question. I read through this and it didn't say anything about how fast those UPS trucks drive through here. I think that there should be something written in there that they have to obey our traffic laws.
Forgiven.
You know, but it isn't in there. And they drive like that out of hell down Carrizo. So I just thought that I'd mention that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? No further discussion? All those
Wait a minute, Bunny.
Okay.
In this contract, that can't be put in there, that they have to obey our traffic laws?
Well, this is my comment, on that, knowing UPS. Siobhan can try to put that in their agreement, but usually anything from the government, UPS, mail, or anything, they do not allow any changes. So that's my only comment on that. Siobhan,
This
do
is
you
a
want
this is a publicly held company, UPS.
Okay.
I didn't get it changed.
I'm just asking, you know.
President Carpenter, we can see if that term would be amenable to the United Parcel Service, and we will do so. If that does not work, we will certainly talk with the district manager and have him remind the drivers of the need to obey our speed limits within the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would say the motion passed. Okay, I don't know if anyone needs a break. If they do, we can take a break. Or does anyone need a break? You want a 5-minute break? Joan does?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Everybody take it. I'm not
5
going
minutes.
to leave. Yeah, we'll leave the screen up. Okay.
Yeah, leave it up. 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We'll wait just a few more minutes. Okay, how many of you can hear me? I'll wait one more minute. You can, but I don't know if Sue or Judith, any of those people back? Rhina, Becky, okay, John. Yvonne. Okay, I think we can.
I can hear you.
Okay, I think we can resume the meeting at this point in time. And the next item is business is a report of the Finance Committee, Financial Reports, Director Prosa.
Thank you, President Carpenter. Grant, if you can get the slides up there. What I want to do this month is just highlight a few things and then talk some specifics on some of the big differences in our finances that we have this year versus last year. Instead of going every line on this thing, because there wasn't a ton of stuff that was open and active, although that's starting to change. So in this first slide, if you look at the bottom line, the net revenue, we have a net revenue over our expenses so far through August 31st, you'll notice, of $3.6 million, which is what we more or less expected based on the changes that were made due to COVID. So, again, just try to highlight some key things. Feel free to ask any questions you may have as we go through, and these are in your packet. If you go to the next slide, this breaks out just operating expenses, and it's a pretty important number because it has directly to do with the budgets that we've altered and what we expect to see in savings to cover additional insurance expenses and other costs that we know we need to deal with. And we were hoping to see this right at about $2 million by year end. So our operating surplus is at $1.733 million, which is in good shape. I will mention that we have a GRF finance meeting this month where I plan to spend a good deal of time understanding what the rest of the year is going to look like and breaking down these numbers, because there were a few blips over the last couple months that staff was looking into to see if we'd be able to meet the targets for expense savings. So far, it looks pretty good. But as I said, we don't have that data here to present today. We will have it, or at least evaluate what we can evaluate in the Finance Committee meeting coming later this month. I'll dig out that date before I end my presentation. If you go to the next slide, this gives you, I think, the most meaningful summary of the overall finances for the year to date, where you can see what our actual versus budget is. And that's how you come out. Even bottom line, again, net revenue, the actual is 3.61 excess over expenses. The budget we expected to only be 1.8 million over expenses. So we're at about 1.8 million over what our original expectations were. And again, a lot of that money's spoken for with increased costs, but very important that we have it as we come out of COVID and figure out how things are going to, be more expensive, where we have additional funds to use for that. Plus keeping assessments at zero. Don't forget, they're not at zero, but we didn't have to increase them this year. And a lot of that was due to these savings we were able to realize. If you go to the next slide, this is the one where I'll spend a little bit of time, and then I'm just going to breeze through the pie charts at the end, because there's actually a page in the packet that explains variances, and I think it's most useful for our board and our residents to know where the differences are and what they might mean. Probably the biggest one to note is the trust facilities fee. We are at 419 resales in 2020 versus 496. So that's almost 400,000 to 500,000 of revenue that we're not seeing. Will it come back as things open up? And, next year maybe have a bigger amount of sales than this year. We don't know. I mean, hopefully that is the case. But just saying, that's money we don't have that we expected to have, and we need to be very cognizant of that. Golf green fees are significantly lower than expected, understandably. Clubhouse rentals, almost $300,000 lower. Again, very understandable. But we've heard comments in the community about, you're getting all this money and we're not getting any of our services, and we're obviously doing everything we can to improve that, as was proven with the dramatic increase in outdoor activities. But costs are still out there. And so, like I said, down $235,000 in green fees, down $296,000 in clubhouse rentals. You start to get the picture that it's not just your assessments that, pay for all these activities that we do, and we do have to manage our costs carefully. Broadband services is $100,000 unfavorable. And I think those are the main ones I wanted to focus on there. You can see at the bottom of that slide, insurance, though, that is unfavorable by almost $300,000 and climbing dramatically. So we've shared that in prior meetings that insurance is in a bit of a crisis due to wildfires. Trying to work through it. We put a new ad hoc committee together. It's not resolved as of today. And so, again, the more defensive we can be with our expenses, the better things will go for our community, in our opinion. On the next slide, it really is a lot of the same things, just broken out in pie charts. So you can see that our biggest expense, non-assessment revenues, where we're receiving money that's not assessments in broadband services and in the trust facilities fee. Now, when I shared that number on trust facilities fee, you get a feel for how important it is to see those numbers maintained as high as we can. There's only so much we can do. We only sold so many houses when there's a pandemic going on, but makes us aware that we have to be fiscally responsible. And you can look at the other expenses broken down, golf green fees, et cetera, et cetera. Moving on to the next slide, you do see the expenses and how they're all working. And we have furloughed employees that did realize some savings, but it's still 57% of every dollar we bring in is going to employee compensation related, and then followed by cable programming, which is still at full boat. So that's a cost that we're trying to manage. And then insurance, which is catching up quickly at 7% along with professional and legal. So that gives you a feel for where your dollars are going and how they split up. And then on the next slide, you'll see the resale history, which, is something we do highlight every month, but it's becoming more and more important because it directly affects trust facilities fees and other expenses. And you can see there was, some improvement in resales, and that's a great sign, but far below the prior 2 years. So, it's something we want to stay on top of and work hard to keep people interested in our community, but also manage the funds, intelligently without those revenues available for capital expenses. And then I believe we have a couple more slides that I'll highlight. You go to slide 8. This basically is just showing our fund balances and showing that the money that we're saving is being saved and not spent, carelessly or recklessly in things that we can't really move money towards right now. Ideally, we'd like to, and I'm now, working closely on the CAC to manage expenses for activities and make things better for our community as quickly as we can. But again, today it's about managing funds so we can keep assessments under control and maintain the quality of activities that we have and improve them as we go. So you can see the bottom on this one, the ending balances were almost $30 million. Work in progress out of that figure was about $6.5 million, with the remainder already obligated of $23 million. And if you go to the next slide, I'm not trying to rush through that one if you have questions, but you'll see it broken out in a graph, which I think is a lot easier to follow. It shows that we've done a good job of conserving the revenues that we've held back due to COVID, and our balances are the highest they've been in 5 years, split up among the fees, as you can see on the color coding. The equipment fund is the top one, or beige or gold, whatever that is, blue for facilities, and so on. Give you a second to look over that. And then finally, the breakdown of where the funds on the next slide are being obligated for projects that are being in process or coming. And you can scan down the list and see that there's, significant appropriations for clubhouses. We, obviously have major needs that we're working on. Security, vehicles, and you can kind of look through the rest of the list and see where those appropriations are. And then the right-hand column shows how much is remaining that has not been locked in and already in progress. So you can see that there's quite a bit for clubhouses that we didn't commit because of some of the good fiscal work I think we did to manage Clubhouse 3 until we know exactly how we want that to fit into our community, things of that nature. So I think that summarizes everything in the financial report. What I'd like to do, or if somebody can jump in ahead, maybe Grant, you have it handy, is tell our community when our meeting is for the Finance Committee, October 21st at 1:30 p.m. And so I apologize if you feel rushed through that information. Certainly didn't mean to. I'm happy to take any questions now. But we will be digging into the particular financial statements and getting a very good feel for what the rest of the year and even into next year is going to look like at that meeting. And it'll be a virtual meeting open to the public, so feel free to attend that. And that is my report. Back to you, President Carpenter.
Because we want to interview a consultant to be able to review the manual and some of our agreements. Okay, so the next item, Strategic Planning Committee. I think, did you mention on that, John?
I apologize. I'm glad you brought that up. So with insurance at a stopping point, we're still actively going to be reviewing it with our new committee, but we got coverage locked in for October 1st. We can now turn our attention to strategic planning, and we do have the first meeting set up. It is, correct me, Siobhan, if I'm wrong, it's November 15th at 11:30. Is that correct?
It's
October 15th.
October 15th at 11:45, John.
Right. So it's really just going to be an overview, kind of setting some parameters and objectives, getting some feedback, and setting a course to really get more involved month to month after that. But that meeting, is coming up October 15th, so we'll look forward to reporting on that next month.
Okay, and the next one, John, since you directed, you were the director for leading the last CAC meeting. Do you have any comments on there?
Yeah, a lot of it's been covered, but because the community knows how many new outdoor activities are now available to them and growing. But the biggest one where, I really want to, give some compliments and make our community feel comfortable about the way we're approaching things with our staff and our CAC committee members. We spent a lot of time studying alternatives on the outdoor gym, and a community member actually suggested that instead of obligating a lot of dollars to options that we didn't think were a good fit, we were looking for angles, and they suggested possibly coming up using our existing equipment. Through that recommendation, our staff found a way to do that safely, and that has led to it opening as of yesterday. And so we're excited about that, and hopefully it's handled safely and gives our residents a much-needed opportunity to resume their fitness regimes. And, we're talking about a number of new things as we go, the concert series. So I think the community can feel good they're being listened to. The final thing that we're doing in CAC is we've taken on a major financial review, which is why I took over as chair. And every activity is going to be looked at as a revenue expense center compared to the number of people that utilize it, to let our boards and our committees make, really informed decisions on how we want to manage shared costs moving forward, where maybe some additional dollars should be invested. So there's a lot coming up with CAC, but good progress was made at the prior meeting with outdoor activities. So overall, very, very positive feedback.
Thank you. All right, for the Equestrian Center Ad Hoc Committee, we didn't meet last month because basically we wanted to wait until the new manager was on board, and then we would work with her to update the programs because basically we want her blessing also. So the next meeting, and it will be with the new Equestrian Center manager, will be October 27th at 9:30.
Hey, Bunny.
Yes?
Very quickly, there's a meeting for the CAC. I apologize, I should have mentioned it. It's this Thursday.
Okay.
At 1:30. So that's open to the public as well. If you want to attend, that'll be a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yvonne, report on the Landscape Committee? Yvonne?
Well, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Our next meeting is in November, and most of what we talked about was at our last meeting was the monkey pod trees, and I did do some research on them, and nobody's ever gotten hurt. And the biggest stand of those trees are in Hawaii, and so I emailed the agriculture department about that. Anyway, and nobody's ever been injured. I just wanted to mention that. And like I said, our next meeting is going to be in November. Any questions?
No, thank you. Egon, you're next. Maintenance and construction.
Okay. All right. So we met on August the 12th. In the open meeting, we discussed all of the items that came out of the PAC ad hoc committee and then the walkthrough. And we went through that and brought up each one of those things and requested each one of those items and requested that we have bids. And they are things like the ADA, the HVAC replacement, ADA, stage curtains, both side and front, the stage rigging replacement, the lobby painting, and the north and south dining room renovation, and the ceiling light replacement in the main auditorium. And our next meeting is going to be on the 14th of October, and we are led to believe that we will be getting bid numbers on all of these items from staff. We also had a closed meeting, and at that closed meeting, we discussed, we looked at the consultant's report for repair of the community center windows and doors that have water leakage. And a motion was made and unanimously approved and recommended by the board award the contract to SC Construction Services to complete the door and window repairs in the community center in an amount not to exceed $29,600 to be funded from facilities fund. We had more discussion on the solar lights at the closed meeting, and that is still undecided. And that's all I have on. So we should have a really good meeting on the 14th.
Okay, thank you. The performing, we don't have anything on the PAC, right? We're going to eliminate that particular committee at this point in time, unless you want to say something. Nope. Okay. Clubhouse 1. Director Maldo.
Fair enough. The committee, as you recall, had met and went through the assessment document that SVA produced, that 190 some odd pages. and we did a walkthrough last month of the building. And at that point, every committee member was requested to state their recommendations and their position with regard all of the recommendations that were made in the SVA document. And we will be meeting at a date. I've requested a date. I have not received a date yet. So as soon as it is, it'll be announced. What we hope to do at that meeting is have a discussion on where we have common agreement among the committee members regarding what it is that we would want to have done, and to identify areas where there's disagreement between committees and see if we can resolve these disagreements. At that point, we will present a report to be given to a select architectural committee, or architect, who will be doing a programmatic study. And hopefully out of the programmatic study, we should get some preliminary thoughts and ideas and designs, which can enable us to get some estimates as to what we're looking at, and we can select among these preliminary designs to move forward. So this will be a long-term operation. It's not going to be quick. I have provided to staff names of 3 local architects that I had received. I had requested this from the AIA, in particular a fellow of the AIA, to identify local architects that we could go to for the programmatic study. And we could look at the credentials and make a decision with regard to which architect we would like to work with. As I said, we're waiting for a date from staff for the next meeting. Thank you.
Bert, can you explain to the residents what a programmatic study is?
Programmatic study is essentially going to the community, members of the community, members who have used the clubhouse, to find out what it is that they would like to have, or what they have found that is unsatisfactory with current clubhouse, and any suggestions that they might make for improvements. And they will be doing focus groups as well. So they'll be talking to the clubs that use that facility. They will be talking to people that use that facility. And the outcome will be sets of recommendations, which will lead to, as I say, preliminary design recommendations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Media and communications. The only thing I can say at this point in time is the next meeting will be October 19th. And at that meeting, we will hear a report based upon the analysis made of broadband. We had a company go out and evaluate the whole broadband, TV, all of that, and that's been quite some time. And so staff will be ready to report on that on October 19th. The things that have changed on here now is that Joan is going to be, will be the chair. And one of the things that she's going to be working on, which we just talked about, not at the committee, but has to do with media and communications, is we need to put together some information based upon year end of what our accomplishments are for this year. And so Joan is going to lead that, and she will want input from everyone, so that we can put all that together. But we haven't started the committee. I know that she hasn't started it. I know she's going to get in touch with staff to find out what their deadlines are. I just wanted to mention it so everybody would be prepared. Start writing. we want to look good. Okay, Joan?
Email your contributions to my Blind Mice 3 address as soon as you can. You may think it's too soon, but it's not. So anytime you feel you have something to say for the end of the year comments or the end of the year accomplishments, get it in as soon as you can. It'll be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next item is report of Mobility and Vehicles Committee. Director Tibbetts.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. Our last meeting was August, and that was reported on. So our next meeting is tomorrow at 1:30. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And did you want to also report on security and community access?
Yeah, and security, the same thing. Our last meeting was August 24th, and we've had no major incidents since that time. And our next meeting is this month, on October 26th at 1:30. That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Director Horton, Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings.
Thank you, Madam President. Our last traffic hearing, we had 11 people were supposed to be there, but only 3 shows. So we had 8 people that were found guilty just because they didn't show. And the other 3, they all got reduced sentences. So, and our next meeting is going to be October 21st at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Troutman, would you like to report on the Disaster Preparedness Task Force?
Yes, we had a meeting on September 29th. It was a 2-hour meeting. For some reason, they had me on the agenda to chair the meeting. So when we get down to chair's remarks, I found that an appropriate time to pass the gavel over to Chief Rojas. So he facilitated the meeting from that point. We only had one member comment, and that was about the fire averts that we looked into a couple years ago, and that was a device that was either plugged in behind the stove or hardwired in behind the stove. And it was a test program. They picked 3 units in Third Mutual. United can't do them because the mutual owns the building, and they chose not to do them. The problem, we couldn't go forward with the hardwire because it was not UL certified. So our alterations permit department could not allow them. So that's where we stand with that. It's sort of a neat item because you can still go get the plug-in, whether it's hardwired or plugged in. As soon as that device smells smoke, it turns the power to your electric stove off. So even though that may not contain a fire, it may prevent a fire from starting. So anyway, so that's something that came up that we hadn't talked about in a while. Then under report, Bruce Baumbright gave a report on the radio communications. Every month we test the radios at 8:30 on the last Tuesday. He reported on that. Our office manager, Tom Soul, was sick. He did not attend, but he emailed me his report. And the following day after this meeting on the 30th, he was meeting with Chief Rojas to look at the new office where they changed the old Globe office, and they were going through the inventory and moving the office supply equipment there. So I have not got an update since they started that, but that's what his report was about. He also normally gives a financial report, but he hasn't been able to go out and sell any supplies. There's been no office for residents to come in and buy earthquake emergency supplies either. So they're working on how he can do that during the COVID. The next subcommittee was recruitment and training. Kathleen Matthews was also at a doctor's appointment, but she sent me her report, and she's planning on doing some training on virtual meetings and training for the clubhouse coordinators and the Good Neighbor captains. As far as our CPR and Red Cross and first aid classes, those are outsourced. We use a vendor to give those, so we won't be doing those anytime soon. But we can start Good Neighbor captain training by virtual meetings, and we can start recruiting again for them. There was a report from the GRF board, the United board, or the third board. Sue Stevens stepped in for the towers and mentioned that they continue to train, as you know, because their buildings are so different than the rest of the buildings. They have their own emergency operating plan, and so they're constantly training, and they have quite a few different conditions in place for entering and leaving the building and visitors and things of that nature. The next subcommittee, which was started in 2016 by Chief Moore, was the Energy Task Force Subcommittee. Has absolutely nothing to do with the Village Energy Task Force, which is no longer. This task force was brought into play only for disaster preparedness to make sure that the Incident Command Center, if we have an emergency, will always have power and be able to operate. So Bert Moldau is in charge of that subcommittee, and he gave a report. So I'm going to ask him to intervene for just a few minutes. And Bert, can you repeat your report for the Disaster Task Force energy requirements that we have to maintain to keep our emergency operating plan current? And I'll go back into that later. But Bert, do you have something that you could?
Well, I'm going to point out 2 meetings ago I submitted a report on alternative means for providing power, available power or reliable power. And there are several ways in which this can be done to assure power availability. Carlos Rojas, who's now the chairman of that committee, was unfamiliar with that report. And so he is going to get back to me. He's going to read the report and get back to me and suggest, or at least take a position on what he would like to do in moving ahead with this area. In the meantime, I've been in contact with several vendors now on new technologies for solutions for very reliable power sources, ones that are not dependent at all on the electric company, but allow you to go off the grid and be independent. I also became aware of an incentive program by the California Public Utility Commission. Apparently, they have made available to SCE $280 million for incentives for companies that are going to use distributed energy resources. So one of the things that we're looking at, obviously, is the way which we can install distributed energy resources and perhaps take advantage of these dollars. I was surprised to learn from this vendor, who, by the way, is the largest installer of these type of systems in the country and has installed 82% of these type of systems in California alone, that they have already applied for incentives on behalf of their customers. It's a very complex process. The book that you have to go through to even understand how you can apply for these resources is over, I think, 100 pages, or not close to about 100 pages. So if we were going to do this, we would obviously need to have assistance from people like this. So I'm waiting to hear back from Carlos. And at that point in time, we can move ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, and that was the only action item. We did vote to direct Carlos to do that and come back within about 2 weeks. And then we added to the agenda, Joan Gamps was there and attended from the foundation and asked for, is there any way the foundation could help during an emergency, help our residents? So she gave a request from the foundation there. And then items for discussion, we talked about, there was some change in coordinator assignments. We had a couple of people resign. I'll be taking over Clubhouse coordinator for Clubhouse 1. So we're looking for someone to cover for Gate 14. Gate 14 does not have a clubhouse. So building 4008, the rec center, is only an informational office. So, and it does have supplies, emergency supplies there. So if there was an emergency, that coordinator would just open that building, that rec building that's in the parking area, and people could go there from that gate to get information and help. That person would also have a radio and be able to call for first responders when needed. We also talked about updating the subcommittees and the emergency operating, or to the emergency operating plan. We're not going to change anything in the main emergency operating plan for the following reasons. Number one, when this plan was in place, up until some history, 1989, when the Disaster Task Force was officially a task force, it was always manned by residents that were retired doctors and nurses and medical personnel in their private lives. And so in 2016, Catherine Matthews, who had chaired the task force for many years, went to Moss, and that's when Chief Moy was first hired, and she asked Chief Moy if he would take over the task force. And so he said, sure. And so one of his first things was to redo the emergency operating plan because Kathleen knew it was not up to par. So, and we were not synchronized with a lot of the agencies that would qualify us for help from FEMA. So she asked for his help, and he agreed, and he did a wonderful job. And now, because of the operating plan we have in place now, we have partnered with Orange County Fire Authority, Orange County Sheriff's Department, El Toro Water District, the Red Cross, Orange County Health Care Agency, Southern California Edison, and Orange County Operational Area. And something else that was interesting that's in our EOP, if anyone ever wanted to read it, was when does the chief open up an incident command center? And it identifies 3 levels of hazards. And I think you're going to be surprised what the county and the state determines a low-level hazard, a medium level, and a high level. Under low level, they consider terrorism, airplane crashes, and gas pipeline leaks under low-level hazards. A medium-level hazard would be extreme heat, water shortage, landslides, or radioactive accidents like from songs. So I was surprised that was just considered medium. A high-level hazard would be considered wildland and urban conflagrations, which is another word for extensive wildfires, earthquakes, floods, energy outages, which is what Bert's concerned with, and public health crisis like the COVID. So we are considered in a high-level hazard right now. So, then the other things we talked about, let's see, I did get also an email, a message from Stephanie. I don't know if she's still on, but she said she was working or started a plan for the horses, so what we can do with our horses. There's another group working on an update to the animal disaster plan, because we really don't have a formal animal disaster plan, but other cities across the country do. So we're going to be using those plans as an example. And one thing I mentioned, Kathleen Matthews, when she was given the CPR classes, even now, you know, maybe 5-10 people show up on the CPR classes. When she gave the one for animal CPR, the clubhouse was packed. People cared more about their animals than they did about CPR and saving lives of other humans. And she just thought that was funny. So I just wanted to share that with you because I thought that was sort of cute because I certainly love my cat. And then, so obviously we canceled the barbecue that we have every year to thank all of our volunteers. So we're not going to be doing that. We are going to be doing the modified version of the California Shakeout. That'll be October 15th at 10:15. We're going to do a, on the internet, Siobhan, it's, what is that, the alert on the internet and on your phone?
The Great Shakeout? Alert. Code Red.
Yeah, the Code Red, thank you. That's it. They're going to be doing that. And then at 20 minutes after, we will have a radio drill to test our radios at 20 minutes after the hour. So if you're a clubhouse coordinator and you were not at this meeting, be near your radio on the 15th at 10:20 because we're going to be doing a radio drill. So we're looking for, I will be taking, Joan Brown resigned also from training and recruitment. So I will be taking her place and working with Kathleen until we can find another volunteer for those areas. Like I said, we're just doing virtual meetings right now. And then what we had, we changed some misconceptions we had for future meetings. We're going to talk about the charter right now. And this was the issue that some people are confused about. We have 3 charters in play here, and that's where there's the confusion. There's the charter that we're using now was approved in August of 2018. The problem is at the bottom where it says, now, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors hereby adopts this plan, and the resolution 901725 that was adopted June of 2017 is hereby superseded in its entirety. The problem is that date shouldn't have been June 6, 2017, because this is the resolution that says the chief will be chair of the disaster preparedness. That date should have been the resolution that came after that, which is still in play online. It was passed July 3rd, 2018, a year later, that says nothing about the chief of security being the chair of the disaster team. So as a matter of housekeeping, all I've been trying to get people to do is go in, and the one we use now, having the chair be the chief of police, is go in and change the date where it says which one would be superseded, and we should be superseding the one that's still active and in play for July 3rd, 2018, because that one doesn't say anything about the chief being the chair. So if we want to get rid of this one, we need to go in and just change the date, and I think we could do that and just throw it in the consent calendar, because it's really just a matter of housekeeping. We can even call it a Scrivener. I think whoever wrote this latest charter just went in and looked at the wrong resolution. They didn't look at the most recent resolution. They looked at the one 2 years ago or 3 years ago instead of the one 2 years ago. And so, and that's something we could check with the lawyer. How does this date, this inaccurate date, affect which charter is really in place? And so, anyway, so that's what we were talking about, and that's what my confusion's been, and I couldn't get others to understand how that legally resolves further and superseded stuff comes into play. So we just want that corrected, and I think it can be corrected very simply by changing the date and throw it in some consent calendar. So that's my suggestion there, and so I hope Bunny understands what my confusion was.
Well, ever since I became president, I ask that I see all the charters, before they go to legal, to even see if we even need to have legal look at it, because to me it makes no sense to pay $400, to have them look at a charter that doesn't have any legal change. But Judith, if you want to present that to me, send it to me, and we can look at it, and we can make the corrections, and then it can go next month in the consent calendar.
Okay, it is online. So, but I will send this one to you separate, and then I'll tell you where to find it online. And so, but I think that's all. That was just a simple mistake. I think when someone was doing the last one in August, they went too far back to do the superseded date, and they didn't go to the one just preceding it. And so I think that could be because we just don't want anyone challenging this. So you know how I am about minutes and stuff, about just little technicalities like that, just to keep things legal. And the other thing we talked about was when you chair a meeting, when, let's say, Dawn chairs the meetings for security. That doesn't mean he's in charge of the security department. That's Carlos's job. When Egon chairs the maintenance committee meeting, that doesn't mean he's in charge of maintenance and construction here in the village. That's Ernesto's job. It's the same with whoever chairs a disaster meeting. That doesn't mean they're in charge of the disaster task force. The emergency operating plan is very clear. That will always be the chief of security. And so who's chairing the meeting? That's why on paper they just had me called chair, but the meetings were facilitated in conjunction with the chief. So anyway, I don't know. Was I just clicked off? It looked like I was clicked. Okay.
No, you're there.
It's just my computer went off. It went to sleep. So anyway, so there was some confusion about what it means to chair a meeting. To chair the disaster preparedness task force just means you facilitate the meeting and make sure everyone's following the agenda and you keep control of the meeting. It doesn't mean you're in charge of the disaster task force in the emergency by any means. It's never meant that. And so just like all of our other committee chairs, they're not in charge of those departments, the staff is. So I think there was some confusion there as well. And so I think we cleared that up. But so parliamentary-wise, I helped Carlos get through the meeting because he'll need some Robert's rules. I told him I'd send him a cheat sheet for the next meeting, but I'll be there anyway to help with controlling the meeting and different things. So anyway, I think that's most of it, and that's it. Thank you. Ends my report.
Thank you, Judith. Okay, the next item, the GRF Bylaw Ad Hoc Committee. I wanted to explain a little bit about that. There was an ad hoc committee that myself, Bert, and also Sue was on it, although Sue was representing Mutual 50 on it, and we met and we went over every single line item in the bylaws. And we are going to talk about this in closed meetings. There were some issues that GRF had, that didn't really coincide with the trust. And so Lori is reviewing those at this point in time based upon our meeting yesterday. And she said she would have that information to me later today because we are on such a short time span here, and we want to be able to bring it to the corporate members so that they can vote on it. We have an input in this, and the corporate members have lists to us, as to what would help to meet GRF's needs, but we don't get to vote. We just get to put in an input, and I think it's been actually very successful, with this ad hoc committee. We'd like to have it approved before the end of the year so that we can start the next year, with our new bylaws. So I encourage those that didn't read it, okay, if they would get familiar with it, because it is, the bylaws is something that we have to, operate by. So the next future items, John is actually, and myself, I want to be part of that too. But it'll be about approving the 2021 GRF residents and guest fees. And basically, I think as he stated that he really wanted to take a look at all of the fees. But we're very much in favor of this year is keeping them, steady because we understand about the pandemic, and we also have passion for the residents, that had to suffer through it. So at this point in time, are there any director comments? And I didn't see any in the chat box, and no one is speaking up. So the time is 11:42. So how about if we meet at 12:15 for the closed meeting? And I just want to remind staff to be sure and let Lori know when to join us. And also, Grant, would you repeat again that we are going to be using the same number, the same code to enter into the closed meeting? Because I know sometimes you had different numbers, and so I'm probably the one that got confused on that. So, Grant, it's the same number, is that correct?
Same number.
Okay. All right, so everybody, we will reconvene at 12:15. See you then. Thank you.